There is a sense of belonging prevalent in the atmosphere during family gatherings, a spirited elixir that seems to pass from person to person, which allow family members to state with confidence their recollection of who we are and where it is we came from. It is at this precise moment we get to bathe in the richness of family. At least what's known to have been passed down throughout our years of living. What comprises our heritage, and just how much do we know about our family history? Set in motion by one simple question: who is my grandfather? This is my journey to discover what is hiding in our family history. Fascinating historical moments and events can be uncovered, or maybe there is insight about family dynamics to be gained. A treasure trove of great accomplishment, moments worthy to pass on to future generations. This is my quest to discover what is unknown in my family history.
Is we were able to get DNA from my mom, and because of the DNA testing and tree of other relatives, my mother's father never owned her as his daughter.
You need to know where you come from in order when to go forward and to understand some things that may come out in your children. I can see if I would have known more of that history of my dad's father. I think she was left with all those boys that they did not even want to reverence him or even to make mention of him. That will explain some things that, we deal with.
Exactly what do we know about our great-great-grandfather or grandmother, uncles, aunts, and cousins? What did they do in order to ensure we would have a future?
When I met George Bean was 84 years old. And he got around. It was nothing physically wrong with him. He got around. He did everything pretty much that he wanted to do. I don't think he drove, but he walked, and he was in physical pretty good shape for 84. As far as for sitting down and having a conversation with him, we didn't really have a conversation. He had more conversation with my grandmother, who I took down at the particular time to see. So I didn't really get a chance to have that much conversation with him. But it was impressive to meet him. I felt honored and I felt proud to meet somebody, from my family that lived to be 84 years old.
Honestly, our family history consisted of various collections of fragmented stories, yielding a sketchy family history and an incomplete reason as to how we arrived at this moment.
Grandpa Chapman lived on Italian Hill. He moved from Arkansas up here in 1900, and he worked at the World's Fair. And I don't know whose cousins we have, but one of the cousins that I can't remember told my great-grandfather to come up here because there was work. And the work was building for the World's Fair. He was a minister. He built his own house. He built the frame house for him and his wife and children. And he had the little church next door. He built that too. My mother's mother was Julia Chapman, who was a daughter of Paul Chapman. So Paul Chapman was my great-grandfather. He was probably the gentlest, kindest man I have ever known. And he died with the foot marks on his back. He ran away when he was a child during the Civil War. And when they cut up, he couldn't have been in 17 or 8 at that time. And they beat him, and they told him if he ever tried to run away again, they would kill him. And he had to be like 7 or 8 years old. And my mother said, I never saw him, but my mother said that he died with the foot marks on his back.
What if there is information, untold family history lurking in the words unspoken? Lingering documents, articles, and DNA, possibly containing clues to unlocking what is hiding in our family history.
I found out that in 1906, on my father's side, I have a great-great-grandfather who came to St. Louis, and he was also a preacher. And I am a preacher. And so it was really great to find out, 10 years ago that I had an ancestor who was a preacher. And maybe that's why, I followed suit. It's really always comforting to know that in your family there are these careers or professions, and that they keep cycling through the family. One of my ancestors fought in the Civil War and possibly became an invalid from the injury. May have happened during the Civil War, but the records show that he fought in the Civil War. So the DNA testing and the research that goes into your ancestry just opens up so much about oneself and about pride. And after so many years, some of the stories or the painful things, they're like very small in comparison to the joy that it brings you to connect with your ancestors.
The search to find out my family history should be a simple process. Order a DNA kit, mix in some traditional research, along with interviews, and discovering interesting family facts should be a breeze.
I set out on a journey to find out who my grandfather was on my father's side. My father didn't know his father because at the age of 5, his father left. Jack Smith went back to Arkansas, worked on a farm. His father was Harrison Smith. Harrison Smith's father was Sandy Smith.
Leroy Smith, I heard a couple of people say he was a disciplinarian, in which he was, but he was just firm. He was just a firm person. He knew what it would take to raise boys. He didn't raise us to be wimps. He didn't raise us to be followers. He gave us the strength to say, stand on your own, work hard, and be productive. We were playing with our Army soldiers, and to make things more realistic, I started lighting matches to simulate a bomb explosion. And so I threw a match at maybe Drome's Army men, and I threw a match at Derek's Army men, and then that didn't excite me, so I think I took a match and lit it to one of those yellow raincoats, and it just went up into flames. The fire department came. They knocked out the windows on the front floor. They distinguished the fire. They, had water damage all over the house, and I really got tore up for that one. When I say tore up, this was probably one of the worst whoopings that a person could get. But I did severely damage that room.
Fascinating historical moments and events can be uncovered as well, or gain insight about family dynamics. Gather treasured moments so they can be passed on to future generations.
Well, he was a corporal in the Marines. He fought in the Korean War. He was wounded in the war.
I was interested in wanting to know he fought hand-to-hand combat, but the war affected my dad in such a bad way that every time he thought about it, he took a drink. And when I asked him, see a war movie come on, I'm like, Dad is, talk to him about this, did this go on? He said, all that stuff is way too real. He said, seeing a man's head get shot off next to yours, splattered, his brain splattered out, is not normal.
I just know he used to say, and I didn't know why, he just said it was really, really hard coming up. I don't know if they were poor or what, but he just said it was really, really hard coming up. And we asked once, and my dad said, we don't talk about that. We never knew why. Asked my mom, she's like, he don't talk about that. I just know he had certain values, which was family, took care of his family. He was everybody's family on the street. I mean, he really loved his brothers.
Time does have a way of burying the truth, and the further we travel on our journey into the future, the harder it becomes to uncover our true history. Understanding what is hiding in our history is the key to knowing what our ancestors did to ensure we survive in the future.
If you know your family history, you can say, oh boy, you remind me of old granddaddy so-and-so. You know what he did? And that those things, they're spoken, but they can be caught by a child. They can be caught and cause an explosion in the imagination of that family member. Well, I'm gonna be like great granddaddy so-and-so. He did such and such. It's been done in my family. And if it's been done in your family before, it can happen again. And when you have the knowledge of your family history, it really does open up the fact of what, we can become and what we may be destined to be or to do without fighting so much about where am I going in life? What am I supposed to do? So many more questions get answered through ancestry and the knowledge of our ancestors, whereas without it, we have gaps. We have gaps in our self-image. We have gaps in our purpose. We have gaps in who am I going to become? And so I think when we have that knowledge, it helps us to become more mature and more of a whole person sooner in life.